All right, Doug, just want to say thanks for letting me know when you're in Helena, Montana. It's good to have you in our community here. And maybe if you want to just start with a brief introduction of who you are or why you're in Helena for the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm pumped to be here, and thanks for bringing me into your studio. It's an impressive space and like super professional and like good lighting, and this is cool. You've done a good job.
Thanks.
And yeah, I'm up here because I'm doing like a beer judging event. So I lived in Bozeman, Montana for a few years, and I've been a beer judge for something like 15 years or so. And I made a bunch of friends in Bozeman. I know a lot of people in the brewing industry around here. And it's the Montana Beer Awards. And there's going to be a big thing at Lewis and Clark later on tonight. So I'm excited to head over there. But yeah, I've been judging beer since Wednesday afternoon. The whole last several days have been a blur because essentially we start judging beer at 8:30 in the morning. And while we don't drink a large amount, you are drinking alcohol for several hours during the day. And it's very intense. It's actually a pretty like mentally taxing thing to do. And you're drinking alcohol. And the thing is, like, these are commercial beers. So like people have put in a lot of effort and time to brew these and enter them. So we try to do as good of a job like judging these beers as we can. And it's been a blast. You know, it's a cool sort of like counter culture. You joined me for a few minutes at Copper Furrow brewery around here. And you look like a brewer, Andrew. So people were like, "Oh, where do you work? Like, what are you doing?" And it was kind of interesting because, like, in the FI community, for example, we have like shorthand and lingo and jargon that like we could jump into, and people were, you know, just talking brewing stuff, and you were like, "What words are those? Like, what is that?" And it's like a hop variety or some other thing. But it's interesting when you get deep into like a counterculture or a subculture rather, and yeah, you have your own lingo and stuff like that. So that's why I'm around here, and I was like, hey, we should hang out, and here we are.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. That's great. So, and I know you've been a member of and a leader in the fire community here for many years, so thanks for all your work there. And I just want to have a conversation about that. So just got a couple questions, and some of these are applicable to me. Some of these are more hypothetical to somebody that could be in a similar scenario as mine. They're not all directly applicable to me, but so you have quit your corporate career years ago and have now been self-employed, fire entrepreneur for many years now. So I think you're very knowledgeable in this space, but to help somebody through that transition per se, so how do you, and this may be a naive question, but how do you ease off the gas when you're approaching close to FI? How do you step into entrepreneurship? I think hypothetically, it's ideal to have a side hustle that generates just as much income as your day job before you quit. But there's a reason somebody pays you maybe $100,000 a year for your job, which takes 40 hours a week. So some people can work 4 hours a week and earn $100,000 a year. Myself is not in that club per se. So how do you step into that, or how do you get barista fi or passion fi? I don't know if you have any words of wisdom for the next generation.
Well, you mentioned one thing, me being like a leader in the FI space. And I wouldn't even call myself that. I'm an enthusiast. I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, like the more you get into like a certain space, like the more I think I don't know what I'm talking about. Although, I mean, when I look back, I see I've accomplished some things, but then when I think about it more, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I got lucky in a lot of ways. So there's imposter syndrome, I think, is basically what that is. But, you know, you talk about kind of doing things in parallel, and I think that is great. The more I talk to people that maybe they gave 100% effort, like really hard effort to retire as soon as possible. My good friend Carl Jensen, one of them, and you know his blog's called 1500 Days, right? Like he was trying to retire as soon as possible. And I hear from people basically saying like, yeah, I should have slowed down. And I think there's a lot more acknowledgement that, you know, doing it slower is potentially better. And one way to do that is to ease off sort of your professional effort that you're potentially corporate job, and then put some more effort into your side hustles. And this is essentially what I did. So for 2 years, from 2013 to 2015, I was doing side hustle stuff at the same time as my corporate job. Turns out like I was actually performing really well at my corporate job as well. And what I was doing is I was waking up early. I was waking up at like 4, and basically I'm much sharper at 4 in the morning than like 3 in the afternoon. So I would get the best work done for myself, and then my employer would get the leftovers. So that's the way I did it. And you're easing off the gas at your corporate career, and if you're a high achiever, like you're used to having those high ratings and all that stuff. Look, I didn't have that problem, by the way, but basically I was in middle of the pack. You know, I wasn't in the fireable area, but it wasn't that great. But you seem like you're pretty smart.
Yeah, I mean, I did fairly well in school, and I'm definitely a high achiever in ways, and try to excel at my career. And I could similarly resonate. I am not creative and hardworking at 8 p.m. or 4 p.m. after sitting on Teams calls for often 8 hours straight. So I think an actual tactical method would be for me to start working at 4 or 5, 6 a.m. and just show up to work later, which is an option in consulting. So
yeah, and one thing, I mean, looking back now, I was a younger man then, so I could like handle a little less sleep and really over caffeinating myself. I mean, I leaned really hard on that, and looking back, maybe it would have been better to just like wake up early, but like sleep a little bit more and just like do even less at the day job. Right now, one of my big priorities is sleeping more, and it is. I feel so much better. Everything in my whole life feels less stressful when I'm sleeping better. So I did wake up early and I felt stressed out. I got a lot done, blah, blah, blah. But looking back, I'm like, maybe I should have just like got a little more sleep and I would have been a little happier. Everything worked out. I'm happy where I'm at now, but like sleep is really important.
Yeah. And right now I probably sleep 8 to 9 hours every day.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And there was a time more for my day job that I used to get up at 4:30 every morning for 5 years straight. I think I was only half awake for 5 years straight. Like, not exaggerating.
Yeah. Everything's a blur. And I'm like, what was I even doing? Why did I do that? Yeah.
And I'm not sure that you have done this, but potentially you and potentially some people you've known, when you're getting close to that 5, how do you or how have others prioritized staying rich versus getting more rich? And so if the market's at an all-time high and the PE ratio is relatively high, I'm not trying to predict timing the market, but at some point you're 100.0% FI, and you don't want to be 70% FI. So when do you transition over to staying rich? And maybe that's an adjustment of your asset allocation. I'm not sure if you've seen a lot of people doing that, but that's just kind of one thing I see going on right now, and hypothetically a question in my own mind too.
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask this, but I'd love for us to go back and forth and talk through it. So I'm definitely more on the optimistic side, and because I have an entrepreneurship background now, I have a big enough ego. Can I cuss?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'll do it later, but I'll put that in the bank. But basically, because I have a big enough ego now, I'm like, oh, if I really needed to earn money, like I could probably figure out how to do it on my own. Could get a job. I mean, the thing is, like, if you're at basically, in air quotes, a 5 point, however you want to define it, if you're that close, you probably don't need that much more like buffer. You could just like get a job for a short period of time and like bridge the gap, or maybe don't take as crazy of a vacation or something like that, and like you would be okay. So essentially, I think for a lot of people, if you're on the bubble area, where if you're at an all-time high, which in the last few years is all the fucking time, right? Like we're constantly at an all-time high, right?
Yeah. I mean, other than COVID, it's been like continuous for 5 years.
Which I'm like 10 years older than you. So like, I remember times when it wasn't like that. And you've had like, I mean, the last 10 or 15 years has been like pretty amazing. But overall, if you're on the bubble at the high point, we're usually at a high point most of the time, or the market's going up. So if it goes down, which is going to happen, it's going to go down like 20 to 30% like every 3 years or something like that. Like, that's just what happens. And then you just sit through it and you're like, yeah, this is what I expect. So for me, I don't pay attention. And I think like, for me personally, I don't want to pay attention, and I'd rather like save more and accumulate more for longer to have that peace of mind. And whatever, every 10 or 15 years, it's going to drop like 50% or something. And we don't know when it's going to happen, but it is going to happen. And it'll be probably shitty, and it's probably going to come back to where it was and be all-time highs again, because you'll have potentially 2 or 3 years of, 15 to 25% growth. And that'll, get you back where you need to be. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I've nerded out and read a couple dozen books on investing, so I thoroughly understand and believe what you're saying. And I personally believe that as well. But it's also, there's some, I'm egotistical enough to objectify why the market is on the above 50% median of high PE ratios today, and how it probably won't stay there forever. And I don't think you're arguing that it will stay there forever. I think you're arguing it won't stay there forever, and it will still be fine with that happening. And so I hear what you're saying. It's just kind of, there's this old investing saying that back in college when I started investing, smart heat, no longer in business. I lost like $4,000 on them in college, junior gold mining stocks. I thought, gold mining stocks made you rich. But like, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And so I don't want to go to the slaughterhouse again. I just want to slowly get fat. So yeah. I don't know.
I don't, like you said, I don't think we're going to be at these all-time highs, but also my personality works better with just being like, you know what, things are going to go up and down, and I don't enjoy trying to figure it out. It's lazy overall. But the thing is, like, the more, I mean, we hear in air quotes, experts and people that have studied a lot, and they can prove some certain point, and then someone else can argue the other stuff. Turns out, but they both end up wrong. Like, it's very rare, especially in this kind of situation where someone's like, I think it's going to go down, and they're right. Like, the experts are constantly wrong. So I'm just like, I'd rather just know there's going to be a lot of volatility in the short term. Long term, I'm okay with that. And the result is, like, my wife is way more conservative than me. Like, we ended up accumulating more, what I think is like too much more. We're luckily young enough where I felt like that was a good risk to have, like the risk of oversaving. And it gave my wife the confidence to actually quit her job. So for us, oversaving was like the right move, and it fit for both of our personalities and our risk tolerances. Although, I was a little frustrated when she was frustrated about her job, but at this point, everything's great.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, first off, it's just great to hear that that's a great fit now for you and your wife. And I probably more align with your wife being fiscally conservative, and where I think I may have just enough, I want more than just enough. Because if a downturn happens, I don't want to have not enough. But I'm also willing to commit to myself to working a corporate job for a few more years, or ideally just going into entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So.
And my wife basically, maybe those exact words, like she was like, I'd rather have more to deal with the down. Like, I don't want to stop working and then be in a position where like we didn't do our due diligence, and now we're in a position where we have to backtrack and like either get a job or like not do what we want to do. Yeah, so we're pretty selfish, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean,
but it gave us full
you're
flexibility.
just not like reckless.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's naive to be like, oh, I'm going to retire on the 4.0% rule. As soon as I hit it, I'm retiring and never working again. It's just like that mathematically can work out, but there's risk there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess maybe transitioning to after 5 for you specifically, not necessarily your wife, but how do you work after 5 or do you just sit on the couch and judge beers 7 days a week?
So yeah, my position is a little interesting, and I have been self-employed since 2015. So I had my corporate job, I did management consulting and software project management. And I got laid off in 2015 when we moved out to Montana. What wonderful state. Still love it here. We ended up in Bozeman for a few years. And I, took my side hustles full time, ended up with online course business, some affiliate marketing sites, and basically worked really hard until about 2020. And by then we moved to Longmont, Colorado, and things were shifting in the industry. And I would say in the last 5 years, so 2020 to 2025, things shifted a lot in that the industry that I was in, essentially like affiliate marketing and SEO, that kind of fell apart. So with AI tools and Google algorithm updates impacting SEO, a lot of this stuff I was working on is like no longer viable. So luckily I exited a couple websites. So I sold them, made, good chunks of money then. And I also had a fairly lucrative online course business that was very lean. It was me and a couple of VAs that would help me, 5-10 hours a week or so. So super lean. I never had full-time employees, very profitable because of that. So we're talking like 80 to 90% margin, which is like pretty crazy, but very typical for online business. And essentially, I ended up slowly ramping things down over the last 5 years, selling stuff, doing less. And in the last year, I stopped marketing my courses. I sunset them, like turned off access because I was like, these aren't relevant. If anyone wants access to the videos or course material, I'll give you access to it. But like, any of the software that I was using to host online, courses, I was like, this is expensive. I'm going to turn it down. So your question, what do I do these days? I have 2 podcasts. One is called The Doug.show. I still talk about like marketing and online business, but usually interviewing people or talking mindset. And then the other one is called Mile High Fi, and it's kind of a advanced financial independence, I guess, YouTube channel and podcast. It's in both formats. And really it's more like, post-fi stuff or lifestyle type topic areas. So that's how I spend probably like 10 to 15 hours a week or so working.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It sounds like a good lifestyle, better than management consulting. So.
I'm doing less work and I shut down all the courses. So it was really lucrative before. But now I'm in a position where like I don't need to earn that much money. Like if I do a little better than break even, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm enjoying this stuff that I'm doing. So essentially I'm talking to people that I want to talk to, and I'm not talking to anyone that I don't want to talk to. Like I'm interviewing whoever I want.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So in the online business world in 2025, if someone were to get started, and I'll kind of, whether they're doing it as a side hustle or doing it full time, what avenues do you think are worthwhile for your effort? Whether it's YouTube, consulting in some fashion, maybe on how to build the YouTube business, how to build the podcast, starting an agency. In my mind, that's like a faster way to start generating income, starting a newsletter, just anything, call it digital marketing or online business, some of the standard buckets. What are your thoughts there to somebody that's wanting to get into those?
I want to sidestep that just for a second. I'm not going to derail your whole question because it was a good one. But are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I'm not, no.
I'm going to tell you a bastardized version of it. But basically, when you first learn about something and your knowledge level is fairly low, you feel like you're an expert. You're like, I'm learning all this new stuff and I I'm really good at this and I'm awesome. So like you think your competency is pretty high, but you're actually not very competent. You just like learned a bunch of new stuff and you're excited. And then when you become an expert, you start understanding that there's so much that you don't know and there's so much nuance. So what happens is experts feel like they don't know what's going on. Like they don't have confidence in their opinions anymore. And it's because they're experts and they now realize how much they don't know. So if you have those two people like talk to each other, like the beginner may sound like way more overconfident than the expert. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is kind of similar to, like imposter syndrome. So while I've done many of the things that you listed out and have been very successful in most of them, I don't know. I feel like I got lucky several times. And I think part of it is that like timing has a big role. So I'm mentioning that because I'm like, I don't know. I'll give you some answers, but I'm just curious. What thoughts do you have on that Dunning-Kruger effect? Have you heard of maybe something similar though?
I've heard, I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but there's like I forget how they describe it, but it's like the uninformed optimist. And then you get to be an informed pessimist. And it's like this roller coaster. I think there's 4 stages. And so like I've taken one YouTube course. I think I don't have enough experience to apply the context, but I could absolutely coach somebody starting out. I have 300 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Not that many. I could absolutely help coach somebody to build a YouTube channel. I think not as well as you could or somebody with 1 million subscribers, but someone who knows nothing, I could short circuit their time frame a lot, I think, actually. And I think I may be just egotistical, but I also think there's some truth there too.
Yeah. Well, the other part is I started my YouTube channel like, I think the first video was like 2014 or something. There was a long stretch of like nothing, but basically, yeah, I've done a shitload of YouTube, but like it's been a long time, so you might be able to coach somebody fresher for sure. But all that said, I will answer your question. So you had a few options. I have experience like doing consulting. I have 2 YouTube channels. I think I have like 130,000 subscribers on one channel. I've done agency work, although I hate working with clients. So, that didn't work for me. I've had a couple of newsletters. They're lucrative and, people use email and you're able to contact your customers directly. And I love podcasting. I mean, I have 2 of them. So I said a lot of stuff, but can you like re-ask the question and I'll just answer directly?
I would like to generate $5,000 to $15,000 a month in income within 12 months. I don't need it in the first 3 months, but I want it to happen for sure within 12 to 24 months.
And you said 5 to 15?
5 to 15, yeah.
Okay. How long have you been working on your YouTube channel? It sounds like the longest.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel's been a thing for about 9 months. And right now I have 7 rental units. More or less whenever a vacancy happens, I stop contributing to YouTube. And so I've started the channel probably 9-10 months ago, and I've probably made videos for 6 of the months per se.
Okay, so it's probably unrealistic for a lot of people. Now, I was able to do it. I was able to do it in the time frame that you mentioned. However, it was rocky, and there were a couple months where I made say $10,000, and I was like, I'm a fucking genius. And then it dropped, and it very volatile. But once you learn a lot along the way. And the thing is, I've heard people say, it's a 1,000-day rule. So it's about, a few years. And it takes a little while to like get your feet under you to replace like your full-time like day job, assuming, you have an engineering job or some other sort of highly professional, like, high skill level situation. And I think that's probably still accurate for most people because you have to, try some stuff. You have to put in a lot of effort. You have to have, a string of, failures or mini failures behind you. Totally possible. Like I said, pretty sure I got lucky somehow or another. I was able to do it a few times. And, I hear other people, and a lot of times, let's say, I worked in the we'll use the podcast and YouTube industry since it's what we're talking about, but someone was able to, do it a little faster. And then you find out they worked at a radio station in college for 3 years. So it turns out they actually had like 50% of the skill set they needed. So they took a shortcut. So if you have one of those, then you could lean into that, and totally possible to figure out a good monetization method, but it's a little tricky. So what side questions do you have on it too? Because I only gave you a little bit, but I want to go deeper too. But
yeah, so I am not a tech guy, an audio-visual guy, so it was very much starting from scratch for me. And maybe I undervalue my previous work experience within engineering consulting. I'm a real estate investor as well. So I started just talking about the FIRE space, small multifamily real estate investing, basic index funds, because I can just speak off the cuff to those. I don't have to do any research. But in my perception now, and I didn't intend to fully commit to replacing Graham Stephan or something like that in the YouTube space, but I wanted to get started and not have to research anything I was talking about. So that was the easy button for me. Now, I don't know that channel niche is one of the best for monetization per se. So one thing I've thought about, you did some project management. I don't know if you're familiar with Notion or Monday.com, these project management, task management softwares. There's a few channels in that space. And then in some sense, you're being a sales guy for that software. You have an affiliate link that's effective day one, and you can do tutorials on how to navigate, how to build projects or tasks in there. And I find that interesting. I'm not the Tim Ferriss productivity bro, but I think that stuff's good for all of us generally. And I think it's something I would enjoy learning. I think it could actually help my personal and professional life. So I think it'd be good skills to learn, and just a much more easily monetization niche. Mm-hmm. So I'm very much thinking about just abandoning my initial channel with 300 subscribers and trying to do a niche that's actually just monetizationable in that shorter frame.
That is one of the best ways to do it. So I have coached people in the past, and actually one of my former students who took some of my courses, he basically ended up doing that. And, there's software for anything, right? And people always have questions. Even if the company has okay tutorials, usually they kind of suck. Yeah. And the thing is, if you do, find some software that you're like, oh, I really like this, I know it well, or I'm going to learn it, or you have some reason to do it, those tutorials are inherently useful, and you're not trying to be over salesy. You're just here's a solution to a problem you have. And yeah, you could do it other ways, but this is the easy way to do it, and it saves you time, or it saves you money, or it's easier to do. And people will, watch your videos, potentially sign up for your email list. And then, like you said, you have a very clear monetization path that is directly related to the type of content it is. So one mistake people make is they're oh, I will build an audience and then I will sell them something, but there's not a good product market fit. And I'm going to go on a side tangent here. I had a podcast accelerator, and it was a live workshop. I didn't create the course material ahead of time. I had a syllabus we went through. Everything, worked great when I ran the pilot. It ended up being people that I personally knew, and I had 3 or 4 people go through. I had 4 people go through. And they all launched their shows. Everything was great. And then I took that and I was I'm going to sell it to my full email list of 10,000 people. And this is probably the 10th course, workshop, digital product that I've sold. And I've done really well. I know how to do it. I have I know how to send the emails. I know how to let people know what to expect and who the right student is. And I sold 0. It was the first time that I sold 0. And this was just last year.
Wow. That must have hurt in some ways. Or surprised you. Yeah.
A little bit. I was I won't be surprised. I remember telling my wife, because she always asked about the launches, I wouldn't be surprised if I sold 0, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were 25. I'm not sure, but I'm going to send out these emails. And I'm not overly aggressive, but I sent, 6 emails in 7 days. Like, I'm not afraid to sell because I typically don't sell stuff. But the issue here is I had an audience that I built up with my previous material, my previous content and tutorials. And it was all about, building a website. And now these people are interested in building a website, which is no longer a viable, even business model. And then I was trying to sell them a podcast course, and they were not there for that. I thought maybe my 10,000 person list was large enough that even if because people are interested in podcasting, they listen and they're like, oh, maybe I could do that. And basically, like, my list wasn't big enough. Now, if it was 100,000 people, maybe 8 of them would have signed up, which is still a completely horrible conversion rate, but it's like, well, it's the wrong product market fit. So all that to say, if you're like, I'm going to do Notion tutorials and you're a Notion affiliate, then that works.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And I haven't used Notion at all, but I have used productivity and hacks in a Google Calendar and seen a lot of success from that in college and my professional career. So I just want something that works. I don't want to invent the next rocket ship to Mars. I just want to have a, I'm an engineer, so I just want something that objectively can work, and then just sit down and just chew on the bone for years on it. And just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and one thing you mentioned is the agency model. So this is a service-based business, and I'm looking at your notes, and you wrote Virginia, and I think that's my friend Virginia Elder. Did you meet her at FinCon?
I didn't meet her, but I just listened to your podcast with her that I enjoyed. So
yeah, she's great. I've known her for a couple years, and she does like podcast production. So she had her own podcast for a few years, and essentially like developed the skills to be a podcast producer. And she does that service for people. And the thing is, like, for me personally, I don't like working with clients because those are like mini little bosses. And I don't like bosses that much. And if you have an agency, you have a lot of little bosses out there that want stuff from you. And I'm like, I didn't like it too much. And do you think you're okay with clients?
I'm very client facing in my consulting career. So that's what I do today for a day job. And so if I could do it where I get the upside, where like, it was funny, I was talking, this is a story from a hypothetical friend. He was talking to his boss about winning a little over like $5 million in work last year for the company. And they're like, oh, instead of a 3% raise, we'll give you a 3.8% raise. Or hypothetical friend. And I was like, what is the point? And I was like, I have to travel 3 weeks in the next month. 0.8% extra is not worth me skipping evenings at home for 1 week a year. I was like, this is a complete waste of my time. How about I make, 10% commission or 5% commission, which is not unreasonable in the working for yourself space. And I'm like, I would get a over 100% raise, but here I am. So I can handle clients. I can do that. I'm not saying I do that when I'm bored, but like I can do it with a smile. I just want the upside too.
That makes total sense. Yeah. And for me, I mean, it was, I was fine, like talking to the clients, but yeah, like the business model that I had just didn't work for me. It was, when I got laid off, that was like the most lucrative area because like you're doing a service. So you're paid immediately, where a lot of the other like online businesses, they end up being essentially like build an audience and then sell them something. And it takes a little while to build an audience, and it's pretty hard to do. Like, you've been doing your channel for a while and it's like 300 some odd subscribers, and yeah, it's tough, right? Yeah,
it's tough. And like, I don't know. It's like, there's somewhat of the fear of the unknown to me, where you have more experience building an audience. I think it is doable with repetition. I don't think it's an if. It's more of a when probably, but there still is an if factor. And it's like, if I'm going to work and spend all this hours, and let's say, like, do I want to fully commit to that and, hopefully someday make some more income? Or why don't I just stay at my job and make on average 10% more in my portfolio every year, plus contributing another 5% or something. And so then my portfolio grows by 15% plus per year on average. And I'm like, I can just literally just hang out for 3 more years, do my day job, work no Saturdays, and be like comfortably fi in 3 years from now or 5 years from now. Or do I grind and work 60 hours a week to build this side hustle up to then, make an extra $5,000 a month or something in a few years? And it's like, or I can literally just do nothing and let my portfolio rise to make me an extra $5,000 a month.
I like how it's all coming together. You're pulling me back in, so good job hosting here. So I think there's a balance, like kind of in the middle, because when you stop working, it sure will be nice to have a handful of skills that are outside like your old corporate job, because those are interesting and it's fun to learn new stuff. And I would say for me, I have, it seems like about a 5-year interest level in something.
I'm similar.
And after about 5, it could be 5 to 10, but essentially like the beginning's super exciting in the first 3 years. The last 2, like you get to more advanced stuff, but essentially like either I'm going to keep going deep in that or I'm going to start transitioning to something else. And that's what I did. So started with blogging, got a little more into YouTube, and then a little bit more into podcasting. And there's a lot of growth space and potential for me because I didn't have a communication background at all. So there's a lot of stuff to learn and improve. And, communicating is like a thing that's, really hard to master, and it's something you can work on for a really long time. And on that point, so like you were like, I could keep working and I could like try to do a side hustle and work really, pretty hard and do 60-hour weeks. I wouldn't do that. I would do like maybe a little less work if you somehow figure out how to do that,
Yeah.
And then, if you could do 3 to 4 days of work, like at a corporate job per week, that's pretty sweet. Like that's great. I think that's a much better schedule. Like if you could do 3 days a week, which is hard to do or impossible at most jobs, but if you can figure out how to do it.
In consulting, it's a thing. I have a team member that works for me that works 3 days a week, and that's their minimum. So they often work overtime to 28 hours a week. So in many ways, I can even take a sabbatical at work. I can go and be gone for 4 months this year if I want to be. So part of me is thinking, do I take a 4 to 6 month sabbatical, or do I go down to 4 days a week for this summer? Like the income and the health insurance is nice, but it's not needed. And it's easy for me to get pulled into 4 days a week. We'll just work a half day Friday, or just do this one work trip this month. And so it's a slippery slope. So I agree that I should not work 5 9s, which it can be common for sure. And I should try to reduce my hours worked. And
Yeah. And so, bringing it all together, if you could like do a little less of the day job, do a little bit of side hustle and, have some skills. Because the fact is, like, basically, if you sit around and you don't do something creative or active or something a little challenging, then you probably get bored, especially people with our kind of personalities where we're like relatively type A. You were doing like interesting shit at work. You have your engineering background, you build stuff, you have the engineering mindset. Like you're not going to sit around, and it doesn't have to be like work or creativity or any people are just like, I want to be an influencer of some kind. Not that you're saying that, but like basically it could also be like physical challenges where you're like, I'm going to climb a bunch of fucking mountains this year and I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And like my focus is health. And like for me, that's one of the big things. Like I end up like walking several miles a day, I think for the last, since my phone started tracking my steps. I think I average like 12 to 14,000 steps per year over the last several years. Except when I'm judging beer, we don't walk much right now.
Yeah, that's all right.
But yeah, I try to work out often. I try to get a lot of sleep. And I could clean up my diet a little bit better, but health is a big focus. I mean, I feel better just focusing on that. And, when we step back, when we have the luxury, very lucky to not have to focus so much on the finances because we solved that problem before. It's like we can focus on health, which is way more important. And I think I see some of my friends that are, they're still grinding really hard. Their metabolism is all fucked up. They put on a lot of weight, and I'm in better shape than I was like 20 years ago, which is sad because I should have been in much better shape then.
Oh, but good for you now.
Yeah. So, and I see them and I'm like, they look like they're 50. They don't look like they're 42, and they need to lose like some weight and like get some shit in order because their priorities are all kind of screwed up from a health perspective.
Yeah. I feel really grateful to have figured out the finances early in my life, and I really grinded a lot in my 20s working on these rental properties. And I mean, there's many weeks or months that I would work 100-hour weeks, and it was very much a grind, but I could do it back then. And I very much noticed I can't work 100-hour weeks like I could when I was 25 years old. I think there was somewhat where I'm like trying to optimize my life. And so I'm, just more of a Madonna, I guess, than when I was 25, it was like just survival. And it was like paying off my student loans and my life savings going into the down payment of my duplex. And so it was like, I will not go the other way because that's not an option. So.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you. So how did you and why did you get your finances in order and work so hard? Like part of your background, or were you inspired in a specific way?
I had 70 grand in student loans and about 30 grand in a brand new truck. And I just hated the letters every month that told me to give them a few $100 each. And I had this good engineering job, air quotes. And then a lot of people thought I was rich because I was an engineer. So apparently when you're 23 with an engineering degree, you're rich. And I was like, I'm objectively the opposite of rich. I'm like massively in debt. And so I have good examples from family and friends, and I have less good examples as well from family and friends. And so I know some people that retired in their young 50s, and I know some people that retired in their late 60s. And it sounds just better to retire 15 years earlier. And I was like, that's a lot different. Like 15 months, but like 15 years. And so I just wanted to pay off all of my debt. And then once I got to dead even broke, I was like, I can just keep following the same trajectory and I'm going to be above broke at some point. And I'm going to have, I've been through the Dave Ramsey program. I'm going to have my $1,000 emergency fund. And then I'm going to have a $2,000 emergency fund. And then someday I'll be able to afford a house, and I want it to be a lifetime renter. And so then I bought a duplex and paid to remodel it, and then being a landlord of one unit wasn't really that bad at all. And house hacking is phenomenal. So then I was like, I just saw this killer deal on a sixplex where it's probably listed for 60% of what I thought it was worth. And so I bought a sixplex, not because I really wanted to buy a sixplex, but I was like, I think I can make a couple $100,000 on this thing. And I can turn my $50,000 down payment into $250,000 in like 2 years. And I mean, I've probably turned 50 into 500 in like 5 years with that one purchase. And so I'm just like, yeah, if not even slightly more than that. And so it's just like, and now I was so frugal because I had to be, and I couldn't afford anything beyond the bare bones. Now I buy a plain t-shirt that doesn't have a logo, and I have more t-shirts than I need. And, nice jeans that aren't oil stained. And I used to roll my eyes at this, and I'm like, it's kind of nice to have, I'm long. I can buy like long size t-shirts that aren't crop tops because no one needs to see my belly button. And I'm just like, so I've experienced some luxuries. I mean, still modest luxuries, but like more than I need. And I'm like, I'm not actually interested in being broke and in debt the rest of my life. And I'm also not interested in barely having enough. And as long as I only wear t-shirts I get for free and wear my 8-year-old jeans that have oil stains in them, then I'll be fine. But if I want to go buy a nice pair of jeans or, I own a camper. I don't need a camper, but it's fun. So I'm like, now I want to enjoy some life's luxuries, and I've worked so hard. So it was an interest in paying off debt, and then an interest in and just being modestly wealthy. Maybe that's offensive to some people, but I'm interested in that and not just surviving barely for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And you highlighted a couple, it's a cool story, by the way. And there's a hell of a lot of debt. I came out of college with, I think I just had one loan for maybe $10,000. And it was just from the very first quarter, because they were like, you should get this loan. It is really good. The thing that they fucking told everybody, so many people have student loan, major debt that takes a long time to pay off. But mine was pretty modest. And basically after the first term, I was like, I don't think I need that. I have all this pile of money. I didn't use any of this. So I was like, I don't need these loans anymore.
Yeah.
And then I worked through college. It took a long time. It took 7 years to get through it, but no debt. So I worked.
That's impressive for sure.
Scholarships and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, one thing that you mentioned, your shirt without a logo, indicating it's not a free shirt. You paid for it.
Right. Yeah.
And this is one thing, we're talking about it a lot now, where it's we have these frugal habits that got us to this point, and then we need to figure out how to spend some of that money, and people are much more comfortable, and we're splurging a little bit more. We just came from, a tap room close by, and I was like, I went to get a t-shirt here, and t-shirts, they're expensive now. Logo t-shirts are fucking expensive. It's $30. And I think a few years ago I would be like, I don't think I'm paying $30 for a t-shirt. But it's a local business, and they're cool. So I was like, I will buy a t-shirt, and it'll be fun memories of this weekend hanging out and this interview even. So, something small like that, $30, that's a good, use of money right there. And, I'm not into clothes, but, this is a cool thing to have.
Yeah, for sure. One thing, this is worthy of an eye roll to anyone in the fire space, but I got into watches recently. This is just a couple $100 Seiko, so nothing crazy. Yeah. But I'm just I'm going to buy a watch. An Apple Watch, that's not $20, and you can buy a Casio $20 watch. And so it's just just some things you want, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, we're talking about it a lot more, where it's it is okay to spend money on things that you value, and you just have to be deliberate about what you're spending on. And most people are cool with it now, even if it's whatever, you got a big truck or a camper or a watch or whatever. I'm buying guitars. I bought a new guitar recently. This is a side note, quick tangent. So I've been getting into guitars more in the last few years. And I buy them used on Craigslist. I typically it's the same thing as real estate. You make your money, getting a good deal at the beginning, right? So I got a good deal on this guitar, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to sell it and flip it. So I ended up essentially doubling my money and got because I wanted to buy a new guitar, of course. Another guitar, also used, also, not as good of a deal, but a pretty good deal. And I love it. And I have fun looking at the guitars. I have fun negotiating. I have fun getting this guitar. It was a Martin 0015. I had it for a few years, and it was a younger guy, probably in his 20s. And it was going to be his first really nice guitar. And I was like, I want to get it to a good home. He's going to enjoy it. He actually got a good deal on it, less than market value, because I got such a good deal. So it's it went to its new home. Yeah. And anyway, I like guitars, and other people are like, why would you spend thousands of dollars on a guitar? And it's just fun, and it's used. So if I sell it, I'm probably not going to lose money. So
yeah, no, I get that, and it's just so many people in the country today, and myself historically, and many in the fire space historically, their finances is just about survival, about how do I have enough to pay rent, student loans, car payment, all that. Mm-hmm. And so it's it's a learning curve, I think, for all of us to have more money than we need, and to then just be able to be like, what do I want to spend money on that I purely like, and and I don't need to argue that I need it. So,
and I'm going to just jump in one more time, and then I'll let you take back over, get us on track. But I think we both realize we're self-aware, and we realize how stupid some of these things are. We're in a really lucky position. I think the people watching and listening, like they understand. So like we're self-aware that we're in a unique position, and we're like not trying to just survive. Like we got lucky, we made some good decisions, we've worked hard, compound interest in so many areas of our lives have like paid off. So like we're aware this is like kind of a silly discussion in some ways.
Yeah, very blessed. All right. No, I think it's been a good conversation. One thing about like investing in things, it's like, and I've wanted to invest in myself, and I think that's something I didn't do historically as much as I should have. I honestly would have preferred to move out of this duplex and get a different duplex that had a garage in a little bigger space. It would have probably been $50,000 to $100,000 more. So call it $10,000 to $20,000 extra of a down payment. And I didn't have the money to buy that. However, I had the money to max my Roth IRA and my 401k every year for years and years and years. If I owned another one or two or three duplexes right now, looking back, I'd have another few $1,000s a month in rental cash flow, probably another $500,000 in equity at least. And so that's one thing with like even just buying some mics and a camera. I think it's in the fire community, it's very undervalued of that you should invest in yourself, including skills like your podcast accelerator courses. Like the amount of value, and not all of those are going to be the best fit for you, but if you take 3 of those things, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to have a lot higher odds of success of doing anything, entrepreneurial or whatever you're getting a course on. Maybe even just additional skills to build your corporate career. If you are actually passionate about management consulting, and you took a course on like project management from Notion, and you personally paid $20 a month for Notion to support your corporate career, I would bet money over 3 years you're going to make more than your money back on that. And you could be a rock star corporate employee if you invested in yourself. Like, I think that's way undervalued.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, the online courses end up being like pretty valuable because you kind of get a shortcut. Like basically you can find anything on YouTube that you want to learn, and it's very, very good, but it's a little bit hard to put it in the right order. And it's a little bit distracting because of everything else on YouTube, and you end up with a lot of noise, and it's hard to get the signal out of there sometimes. So the online courses work really well. And I, I was reminded, you asked the question like, all right, I want to make 5 to 15,000 per month within like a year. And I was like, I don't think you can do it. Basically, it'll take longer. So I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just going to take longer than you think. So I think most of us have this where we think we're a little bit above average, but it turns out only about half of us are.
We're actually average.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, like, basically, I thought I'd be able to like do my online business faster than other people. And it turns out like it really wasn't much faster. It took me, 2 years to get like full-time income, up and down. So it just takes a little bit longer. And what happens is like, as you keep trying, you learn stuff, you learn what not to do. You're still taking risks and all that kind of stuff, but it just takes a little bit longer. And most people think they're going to be able to do it a little bit faster than other people, but you can't.
Yeah.
So it'll just take a little longer. You can totally do, if you pick any one of the things that you've listed right here, you can make a full-time income from it. And you just have to like focus on the one and then pivot when you need to. Because whatever you think your plan is, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You just have to pivot when the time's right. And occasionally you have to like, leave the sunk cost and just be like, that was pretty good, but I need to cut it off so I can focus on the next thing. And what might happen is like, you're learning YouTube, you got a great audio setup here, and what might happen is you do your thing for a couple years, you build your skills, you got a high competency level in this area, and then you meet someone at a conference and you're like, let's start a show together. And then you work on that, and that's the thing that works because they have another skill set.
Yeah, that's complementary or synergistic to mine.
That's what Carl had his blog thing, and I had the YouTube and podcasting. We came together, we started the show, and like we had a good like diverse skill set that didn't overlap very much.
Yeah, that's a good point, and and I'm really actually content with that 1,000-day, 2.5-year timeline. Most entrepreneurs start, I think it's like 2.6 businesses, so they have 2 or 3 failures. And I'm okay with that. I've tried doing some engineering on the side. That was very hard to market myself. And I just don't want to trade my time for money eternally. And so I think, like, for right now, YouTube is the one that I know the best. And I think now, after doing it for a while and more awareness, I think it makes sense for me to pivot to a niche that's more easier to monetize. And I don't feel a lot of heartburn about the sunk cost of giving up my personal finance channel. In many ways, that was just a learning channel and an easy button to get started in. But knowing what I know now, I think that a better niche would give me better odds of success or faster income. So I don't know.
Yeah, makes total sense. And that's the perfect way to look at it, where you're like, I learned a bunch of stuff. I know more now than I did before, and I'm going to use that information. I'm not going to be stubborn and keep pushing this boulder up the hill, Yeah. And I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And I think even getting into this project management niche, I think that would help my corporate career as well. And I will probably personally pay for Notion. I think it's like $20 a month. But I'm like, I think that'll actually just help my overall life productivity and may even reduce the hours I spend a week working because I will more efficiently work. Between YouTube and my corporate career. And I totally, when I want to learn stuff for free on YouTube, greater than 0% of that time do I get sucked down a rabbit hole. And so it's like, I've taken, I don't know if you've heard of like Tropical MBA podcast.
Oh yeah.
So like I'm a member on theirs, Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. I'm on that, did that course, but I haven't like had the time to actually work through it all. And then Gabe Bolt, if you know him, he's a YouTuber, kind of more in the minimalism space.
Oh yeah, I met him at FinCon. Yeah, I've seen his show, or I've seen his YouTube channel a couple of times. I need to have him on mine, so
yeah,
I need to reach out. I just met him. I don't know if he'd remember me, so.
I can put you in touch with him if you want.
Oh, thanks,
Yeah. But I did his YouTube course as well, and it's like, I just learned a ton, and really I just need to sit down for like an hour and watch one of the like Gabe's videos or one of Pat Flynn's videos and then go and execute. But like, it's just hard with my day job and still trying to have a life balance. Cause I only worked for like 5 years. And so I can do that, but I'm like, I don't want to have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So, but.
Interesting. Yeah. And the Tropical MBA, that was one of the shows I started listening to when I first got started. And yeah, I was in the DC for a few years, and kind of interesting. I went to one of their smaller DC events in Steamboat, which was great. I knew a handful of people, really fun. But when we went around for introductions, and for people that don't know, Tropical MBA, and it's a podcast. They've been around since I think maybe like 2008 or 9 or something.
Long time, yeah.
And they have a paid community of it's location independent entrepreneurs in all different fields. But when we did intros, I was at the point where I was like doing less work. So a lot of people's intros were like, I do this. My goal is 9 figures. My goal is 10 figures. And I'm like, my goal is doing less work. So I was like, I felt a little bit out of place, and everyone was cool with it. No one judged me, to my knowledge, but basically I was just like, this is the wrong room for me. I fit more with the, like, I understand when enough is enough. No offense to the entrepreneurs, because like some people want to build something bigger, and I don't really give a shit. So I was like, I understand what my enough point is, and I really like not working way more than I like working. I think you might find the same thing. Like, I didn't realize it. And when I've chatted with a couple of people recently, and they're like, I'm such a like doer. I don't know like how you could even do that. And that's literally what I would have said like years ago. But it turns out like a leisurely pace fits me much better.
Yeah, I think it would fit me better too. And that's where it's like, I did the grinding out of survival, but I objectively know that if I spent every Saturday on YouTube, my YouTube channel would grow, but I don't want to spend every Saturday on YouTube. So it's just like, I'm like, and I'm so close to enough, not enough plus some, but like, I'm like close to enough where I'm like, I really just want like a paid off nice house, paid off cars, a big emergency fund, and then like enough to pay the bills and still save a little bit and like just work here and there and just like hang out with friends and family and just like do my thing, you know?
Yeah. And you're probably like 2 years away. Like you just need a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm like, do I want to work 60 hours a week for 2 years to build that side income, or do I just want to like hang out for 2 years?
Yeah. Just hang out and, start doing a little less. Don't do as good of a job. Like get things like 80%. It's pretty good.
Yeah. No. And
you're an engineer though, so you kind of got to get shit right now.
Well, I mean, I'm a project manager, so I just,
Oh.
Yeah.
I have a PMP. Do you have a PMP?
No, I got nominated internally, whatever that means, to get on this PMP program in January and February of this year. But I was traveling for work 3 of the 4 weeks, and they're like, yeah, you could just do the courses in the hotel while we're traveling. I was like, in the evenings. I was like, hey, I already go to dinner with the client, so I get to the hotel at 9 p.m. and I have to be at breakfast at 7 a.m. and I'm not studying. And then if I didn't stay at the company for 2 years, I would have to pay back for the PMP course. And I was like, I bet $1. I'm not here in 2 years.
Yeah, it's really dry, but it's not a fun thing to go through. But it's a kind of a tough test too. I spent a little while studying it, but yeah, I still keep it active even though I'm not planning on doing it. Wow. But like, it's hard enough to get where I was like, I'm going to keep this up because it's pretty easy to keep it going. And just every 3 years, you have to do the continuing education, professional development units, PDUs, they call them. So
nice. Yeah, I think I'd be qualified to do it, and it would be directly applicable to my corporate career. It's just I want to not have to travel for work whenever they decide on a short notice and to regularly work overtime. I'm just like, at what point of FI can you then trade your time for money backwards and be like, I actually only need to work 3 days a week or 4 days a week because I make 80% of my salary on investment income, so I don't, and so it's like, I'd love to work 20% and maintain health insurance, but like, yeah, so maybe I need to just try to go down to 4 days a week and see what that's like.
Well, you know what? I was chatting with my wife the other day, and she reminded me how bad of an employee I've been very consistently. So back in roughly 2009, this is when I was still trying to make, manager and go, do well corporately and all that stuff. And we were doing like some, roughly shift work. So some people would come in at 8, work during the day, but then it went all the way until like 2 a.m. and like people basically were there except for like 4 hours in the middle of the night because we had an international team. So anyway, I played along and did some stuff. We all divided it up and the team split it. But then it was around the holidays and they wanted me to come in on Christmas Eve, which I wasn't supposed to. So they were like, Doug, we need you to come in on Christmas Eve. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I did my stuff before and like this wasn't part of the plan and I'm not coming in. So the guy was like, what? Like, what are you, this is my boss. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I'm not coming in. So like, you can find someone else to do it. And they were like, well, this is not going to be good for your performance review. And like, this is just not good if you want to get promoted. And I was like, okay, like I understand the consequences here, but you go fuck yourself, basically. And the great part is those people don't want to work with me anymore, right? And I'm like, I don't want to work with you. You guys have no boundaries. Like, you fucking work it. Like, you fucked up on whatever your thing was. So, like, the plan was unrealistic and we all knew it. So, like, stand up to your boss and tell them. Anyway, so I didn't do it, and I got a bad review, and I never had to work with those people again because they didn't want to work with me.
Win-win.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I made a stand. I didn't have FU money then. We didn't even track our net worth for 5 more years after that. But I was just like, I'm going to, like, it was more important to me to spend time with the family, because no one's like, I'm glad I worked overtime instead of spending time on Christmas Eve with my family. So I'm like, that's an easy one. And I will happily tell people no. Not that, you had that situation or anything specific, but it's like, you can tell people no and they can figure it out. Or like, I mean, someone has to stand up to it. I interviewed someone, a former lawyer, and that's the culture. They do whatever. I mean, they get paid a lot of money. And he started saying no because he knew he was going to quit before too long. Yeah. What are your thoughts? I love that you laughed. You're just like, I can't believe. Yeah, I had big balls, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think it's just funny. It's good that you stood up for yourself. Historically, in my young 20s, I worked at a refinery, and we would work 100-hour weeks every spring and fall for a month straight. Every spring, every fall, 100-hour weeks for a month to do these big maintenance turnarounds. And I had one of them that lasted 7 weeks. And you'd work 6 a.m. to 6 or to 7 p.m. or vice versa with a half hour. You'd work 6 to 6 with half-hour turnover on each side. That was normal. And working 13 hours a day, 7 days a week for 7 weeks straight, like, you literally delete the rest of your life. It doesn't exist. Your family, your friends, your church, your gym, nothing exists. And I got like a $3,000 bonus at the end of that 7-week shutdown, because you're only getting paid for 40 hours a week. Your salary, you got no overtime. And I whipped out my phone to a calculator in front of my boss, and I showed him how many hours of overtime, like 50 hours of overtime per week. I was like, hey, just so you know, I'd get paid more at McDonald's on Saturday. Do you think it is wise for me to work at McDonald's every single Saturday? And I just sat and waited for his answer. And he laughed like that, that awkward. And I was like, answer the question. Yeah. And he's like, no, I don't think you should work it. I was like, I know. They pay more. So, no, it's hard. Like, I heard about a friend who had a conversation recently with her boss about trying to win more work for the company, different company than I work at. And they were talking about like, hey, you should not decline this work from the clients, because like our business is to grow the business. And they're like, well, we didn't have anybody to do the work. I could do the work, but it'd be like another 10 to maybe 20 hours a week. And I'm already working 45 hours a week, they were saying. And they're like, but yeah, we should take the work on now. And they were like, great, who should I give the work to? And they're like, well, I think you'd be the best fit for it. And they're like, yeah, I'm not working 65 hours a week. And they're like, well, we're not saying that you need to work 65 hours a week, but like, we need to, get that business and not give it to our competitors. And they were like, yeah, they want the work to start Monday. So who should jump on a call tomorrow to take on the work and get an introduction? Like, well, I don't know that we have somebody. I was like, that's what I told them. I'm like, well, they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do the work. So it's like, it's tough to have those boundaries, but like, it's so freeing now I can just be more honest. I do it tactfully and respectfully, but I'm like, oh yeah, I've been asked to do some, things that require a lot of overtime. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to decline this because I just know myself. And if I regularly commit to this and the next 15 things that look just like this, I was like, I'm going to get burnt out, and I'm going to probably start applying elsewhere while doing this if I'm having to work all this overtime. And I don't actually want to apply elsewhere, and I don't want to leave. So it's better that I'll just pass on this than I can stay happily employed here. But if I start taking on a lot of requests, just like what you're asking me, I just know my personality, and if I get burnt out, then I'm just going to go somewhere else, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're just like, I can't believe you had the balls to say that to me. I'm saying I'm not there, but I'm saying I could get there, just like anybody else, just like you too. And they're like, well, I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, I hope you'd tell your wife you would do that. So you're either lying to your wife or to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's corporate life. It's just, and it just shows the importance of having FU money and how freeing it is to just be like, and maybe you didn't have it at that point, but like, yeah, if my boss were to say something, it's just like, it's from such a blessed and privileged perspective to just be like, oh yeah, I don't actually need to do that. And if it hurts my performance review, like, oh, that's okay. Like, yeah, my performance review isn't hanging on my fridge, so it's all good. Yeah.
But the thing is, the raises were always so shitty that it's like, we're talking like not that much or also not that much. Like the performance review was kind of dumb.
I know, that's why like this year I got the attaboy and they gave me like $1,000 pre-tax extra raise. And I was like, what is the point of this? I was like, I'm just like, I can work overtime and I will work overtime while traveling literally the following week and probably more than $1,000 after tax because I had like a 50-hour travel week coming up. I was like, literally, I'm just going to like go work hard for 1 week and make this. So what the hell is the point of spending a year to earn this? So I was like, this is so discouraging to me. So.
It's interesting. And then going back to, working for yourself where there's no waste or very little waste in the system. So like if you sell more courses, you make a crazy amount of money more. And that's, my wife was skeptical and even till, the last few years, she was still like, I can't believe like you make any money online, which is kind of funny because I've been doing it for like a decade now. But yeah. I mean, the courses that I sold were $500 to $2,000. So like when you launch a course and you sell, 20 or 30 of them, like that's a huge chunk of money that comes in. And it's like, that blows my mind, especially like having the corporate job and like working hard for very small raise or a bonus that's basically a joke. And, looking at the value, in air quotes, the value that I created in the course material and then sold it. And then, you build that once, you can sell it a lot of times. So anyway.
Yeah. What were your courses on? Essentially, it was making money online, which is kind of it's a tough space to be in. So this is kind of the classic thing. And, it's done often where someone learns how to do something and they're like, I will teach other people how to do it. And I built these affiliate marketing niche websites, which were pretty popular. Like Pat Flynn talked about it. I was actually on Tropical MBA talking about affiliate marketing a few years ago. Oh, cool.
And essentially, because I did have an IT background and the project management background, I used those qualifications to put together a course that had maybe more value to people with a background like me, so other IT professionals, because I talked like an IT professional and I had a PMP, and other people were like, I'm a project manager at my job. So I understand like how Doug is putting together this framework, and it's actually a little bit better organized, and I would use a critical path and a lot of lingo and terminology from the corporate world. So luckily, people that work in IT make a lot of money, so they hate their jobs, they can buy the course. But anyway, I brought a professional spin to it, and it worked really well because no one else had a PMP and that was teaching it out there. So it worked
Interesting. Well. Yeah, I haven't got that because I kind of roll my eyes at some of the credentials and just want to spend my time making YouTube videos versus studying for a PMP.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool. Good for you. So.
And I was going to say, like, I got the PMP in 2008. It was pretty hot back then. Yeah. My company had training and like, so they sponsored the whole thing back then. And yeah, I think it got a little saturated, but it's a good credential.
It still is, to the best of my knowledge. It's just for my company, I would have had to front the money, and then I only get reimbursed if I get above a certain score. And then if I leave within 2 years, I have to pay it back. And so it's like, okay, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. Mine was like all included, and they were happy to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ours are happy to have a lot of things, but like I have to front a lot of money for work travel and stuff. And then and it just kind of, I'm just like, I'm sick of borrowing this company money. I don't care what the idea is, So, all right. Well, thanks, Doug, for the conversation. Really enjoyed, all the lessons and wisdom you have. So, yeah, good to hang out.
Yeah. This was super fun. I feel like we could keep talking for a few more hours, especially if we get a couple beers here.
Yeah, maybe later. So, thanks, Doug.
Thanks for having me.